Good afternoon, Richard.
Good morning, Pat.
Is it actually morning over there? Or you
You
just
know it is, man. It's the evening. It's the evening time.
you just been well, I know you think I was throwing you off because normally it's morning over here, but we had to go a little late today to get started. So,
Oh, of course, it actually isn't the morning for you, is it? It's the afternoon, just about.
right,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
lunch.
yeah.
Which
Do
which,
you
which
have do you have clocks with hands on, or do you just
yeah,
have the ones with numbers?
we no, we don't have the little hand is on the 12, the big hand. No, we have the clocks. As a matter of fact, most of my clocks are made in Britain. I don't know
Really?
what it is. My wife buys these clocks that they're Brittany or something, but they're mostly made. She bought a whole bunch of them. They're made
Yeah.
in Britain.
Will you be able to get that with the tariffs now? There'll be like $1 million, won't there? No?
Well, we've already got them. All we have to do is keep replacing batteries, which
Okay.
which is the thing. My wife is like a clock freak, and she has clocks all over the house. And so she has them all over, like every wall you look at, there's a clock. The problem is they take batteries, and she buys the batteries at Dollar Tree, which is Pound Tree. Isn't that what it's called in
We
England?
we we have pound land, and we have pound land. So yeah, but I'm aware of
Okay,
Dollar Tree.
okay.
When I
I,
was in Mississippi. I met a woman who said she could do a week's shopping at the Dollar Tree. Yeah, so
She can. The stuff you can get in there. But calling something, I don't want to get, but calling something pound land or pound tree in America would be that it could have a whole different connotation. So it's
yeah,
probably a good thing we've stuck with the Dollar Tree there. But yeah, it's a dollar, or now that inflation, $1.25, $1.50. You'd be amazed at stuff you can rack up on in there. But she gets the batteries, and the batteries aren't like the best maybe quality batteries. I don't know. So they kind of fade fairly quick. So the point I'm getting at is you walk around my house, it's like I'm in 8 different time zones because the battery starts fading. It's 10 o'clock over here. It's 11. I got to meet Rich at 12. Wait, which one of these clocks is kind of close to the actual time? It's like you have the clock to have the clock instead of to actually tell the time. So anyway, but it is lunch, so this is one of the few times. So I guess you've had a long day to squeeze it in. Actually, I'm in a little trouble it being lunchtime because I know you've had a crack at marriage and you're about to get married again. But after 35,
that's very diplomatically put, Patrick. Yes, that's correct. Yeah,
I think
I gave it a go. Not
I,
very. I shouldn't laugh. Not very successfully, but
no,
yes.
no,
Sorry,
I
go
know
on.
it's not. I know it's not funny. I know you feel. I know, but I think you would say had a go at it.
I did. I had a go. I gave it a shot. I definitely
Gave
gave
it,
it a shot.
gave it a shot. Well, my wife had given it a shot before she, you know, before she landed me. So,
A big
35 years
fish.
later. Yeah, I told you before. I got married, big fish. She, we, we lit, we, yeah, it was, no, yeah, she had no idea. It was, actually, we worked for the same company, and I kept hearing about this woman that was the state administrator in Jackson, the capital, and they were telling me how attractive this woman was. And I was still a bit of a shallow Hal person back at the time. I've been fighting it all my life, but I was like one guy, a boss I had one time. He said, "Pat wants somebody to make him look good." So if they're telling me that this girl is looking, but bottom line is they turned out. It was right because I'd come home from work one day and the guy that was my district manager at the time called up and said, "You need to come down to the office." I'm like, "Man, I've been out in the country. I'm tired. I've already got my tie off." He said, "You got to come on down." He was a friend of mine and he kept telling me, "Come on down, come on down." And I'm like, "I'm not coming." Finally, he said, "You better come on down." And I said, "All right, I'm going to come down there." I said, "But when I get down there, Christy Brinkley better be sitting on that couch." He said, "All right, come on down." Well, actually, he was a country guy, so it was like, "All right, come on down." So I drive down there, And I walk in the door and he said, Pat McCool, meet Christy Brinkley. And points over to the couch and is the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen in my life. And I immediately think, way out of my league. But I throw something out, I kind of make a comment and then she responds and I'm thinking, wait a second, this woman is actually talking to me. And it turned out whatever I was slinging, she was buying, and within 100 days we got married, as I told you, in a double wide trailer by a guy that I used to work with, about 45 minutes out in the country. And the guy went out and showed us his goats and his mules, and we picked up a box of Kentucky Fried Chicken and headed home. 35. I had to move in. I had to seal the deal before she realized I didn't have a fortune stashed in the Caymans, and I really hadn't, rescued children from a burning building or whatever I told her the first night that we met. So, but what I was getting at was after 35 years of marriage, you listen to your spouse, but you listen for tone. If it's an emergency tone, you you hone in. But if it's just regular talk monotone, you might not hear it as much. So you get it. My wife was cooking something and we had like some French fries left over from the weekend or whatever. And she said, "Do you want any French fries?" I said, "No, I'm sick of French fries." And she screams back, "You're sick of my big fat thighs?" It's like, "No, I didn't say anything about your big fat thighs." She said, "So you're saying I have big fat thighs?" I just, I just, I don't know if that's ever happened to you. I just grabbed my stuff and headed up the stairs, and I will.
Yeah, well, I'm familiar with that kind of communication breakdown. Definitely, I think that's transatlantic for sure.
Well,
That's
hey,
trans. Yeah,
yeah. Well, hopefully I'll stay up here talking to you long enough that it will have
let things simmer down. Yeah,
it will have moved on by the time that I get back down. So, well, anyway, today we've been meaning to talk about this. We want to talk about the difference between church in England and America. And I have never been in the church in England, obviously. So if you would go first, and you have been in America and American churches. So if you want to start by telling us your experiences.
yeah. I mean, when I was in Mississippi, Pat, when we met, right? I was thinking about this the other day actually. Like the, you know, I was I was a drug addict, as you know, right? So like my world for many years was very small, very, very small, right? It was, a couple of square miles really. And if there was a better, if there was better dope, better heroin, like a few miles down the road, that was like a holiday. That was like a day out. And then now I've had this opportunity. I was, really thanking God for that actually. Like it's like I've had this opportunity to see some amazing places, and I think Mississippi, I know I think Mississippi gets a bad rap from other Americans. I thought it was, I really enjoyed my time there. But one of the things that I did when I was there was I went to church there, right? And I think what do I notice about church in Mississippi? There's a lot of it. Yeah, there's a lot of it. Yeah. And like and some of the driving past some of the churches were like driving past a small town. There was like, like several big buildings all connected, and then another building over here and another building over here. But it was all one church, on a huge plot of land. So I really noticed that. But we went to um you all know where this is, Pat. I can't, it was a Baptist church. It was next to a high school, right?
Temple
And
Baptist Church.
yeah, I believe so. That sounds very familiar.
It's
And
out kind of west of town.
yeah, it's kind of on the way out of town. We were driving down the road. We were going to a crawfish bowl, which was the Mississippi Crayfish Company was down that road, right?
Right by it. Did you eat the crawfish?
Yeah, man. I ate crawfish. I went to a crawfish bowl. Um,
It's
yeah.
crawfish bowl.
Yeah, it was bar. That's it. It was an experience, man. I went with a couple of guys. There were big trucks. There was a lot of talk about guns, and we ate crawfish. And honestly, I loved every minute of it. Now, I have a baseball cap, a ball cap from the Mississippi Crayfish Company, which it was cool. It's a nice memory. But anyway, on that road, as we're getting back to the matter at hand, was this in this church, and it was the scale of it, Pat. Right? It was like so. there was this enormous parking lot. There were people directing you to where to park. There were different entrances for different. There was the student entrance, and the kind of regular people entrance. And walking in, there was like a massive corridor around the central auditorium. But the only place I've seen that over here is in stadiums, like where you have that kind of, a space that is so big you need to build another space around it in order to figure out how to access it. They're like so, in different
They direct
entrances.
traffic in front of it. There's actually a police officer will be out in front on Sunday mornings directing tr traffic. There's
Yeah,
that
because of
many
the
people.
sheer volume of people going there, right? And so I remember walking in and I have seen it over here actually interestingly in very small churches for different reasons, but like in this huge church, so they had that kind of communion to go. So like a little pot of grape juice with a little with a little wafer sealed in the top, so so it,
Have you done that in England?
I have seen it in England since, but what I tell you where I saw it in England, it was sort of like they had like the opposite situation that they because it was such a small church. It was a little Pentecostal church in southwest London near where I lived for a short time. Um, and so because the congregation was so small, 8 or 10 people, they did it like that, right? Because it made more sense, I guess, than having the full sort of setup. But yeah, but in this church, obviously, it's because the volume is so huge of people, right? So if you did it traditionally with the table and the bread or the wafer and the goblet of wine, the blood of Christ, right? Then obviously it would take the whole day to get to everyone, right? But so walked in, communion to go on the way in, and then walked into the main kind of auditorium and like there's just rows and rows and rows and rows of seats, like cinema seats, like movie theatre seats, right? Like, and then this huge stage, and then there's like the gallery upstairs, which I think was where the students were. And like it was just this like phenomenal space, like so big, right? And the production values, the way that the band was set up and all that kind of stuff was, like it was like being at a concert, so yeah, it was the scale. And then when it came to communion for the congregation to take communion, there was a bit like, do you have Rice Krispies over there? Do you know what Rice Krispies are?
Yeah,
That
I
yeah,
have
like
Rice Krispies.
snap,
Eat
crackle,
them
and
since you're
pop.
a kid. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
You ate the Rice Krispies, and at the end you had milk in a big glob of sugar
yeah.
at the
But when
bottom of the
you
bowl.
but you remember snap, crackle, and pop, yeah. So
Yeah,
you pour like
yeah.
so when everyone's opening the things, it was like being opening the little cellophane wrappers with the thing. It was like being inside a giant bowl of Rice Krispies because all you can hear is this like chit 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 all over the place. So, I mean, that was the thing really that impressed me about it. It was awe-inspiring. Was just the scale of it really. So, I think I mean, look, Mississippi's Bible Belt, right? So, like, you've got a really high concentration of believers there, right? So yeah, just the number of people. Like, church was very much a part of everyday life there. Whereas over here, it's not like that. You know, there is a revival, and like our younger people, our Gen Z, like they're more of them are going to church than I think for many decades, right? So there's this huge revival in the church, which is probably worth talking about why that is. But but yeah, those that's certainly like that was my experience over there. Yeah,
If you went long enough, you would have. I actually do a bit in my comedy show about those communion cups, because if you go long enough, you're going to have one Sunday morning where they get a batch of those cups that won't open, and so they doing communion, the Spirit's moving, and then the pastor tells everyone to open, and nobody can get can get the cup open. The little plastic top on it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
everybody starts struggling on it, and then the pastor has to get up and make an announcement. It's like, okay, we're having a little trouble with our communion cups. If we could have one of the women, any of the women on the aisles, have a file. If you could just pop that and pass it on down. And it's we had to try a different vendor. We, try to save some money. If everybody was tithing properly, we wouldn't have to do this. It's just,
Oh
it's,
no.
it's just like it's a whole episode, and then people are passing their, passing the
Their
files
implement.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they're passing the files around to dig in, and in Catholic churches, they do the actual communion, where they, in the Catholic Church, you better not be a germaphobe, because my wife is a germaphobe, and we attended a wedding at a Catholic church, and we get up to go down to go do communion, and we all come, instead of sitting in the chair, you go down along this thing, and then the priest gets up and he pours it into a goblet. Is that what you chalice?
Alice Goblet. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all came from me, pours it in there, gives it to the first person. The first person drinks it, and I'm thinking, boy, they're going to need an awful lot of goblets. No, he wipes it, hands it, pours it, and hands it to the next. Catholic Church does do, they still do the actual thing. But like you said, in a church that size, you're not going to, you'd be there all day. Did you
Yeah.
notice? See, one of the things at churches in America is you'll have a school. Like I have a granddaughter, she goes to pre-K at the Baptist church in a town about 30 miles away. So they probably have a preschool at the Temple Baptist. What you didn't see, they also have a gym. Did you see that?
No, no, I didn't see a
Yeah.
gym. No.
If you would have looked on the back, they have a basketball gym, they have workout facilities, they have people like that's where they go to the gym is there. But that is I don't say that's the exception. Those huge churches are all over the place. But there's all different type churches, churches that you passed on the way up there. Did they have the coffee shop at the
Yes. Yeah, they had a coffee shop. Yeah.
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 I've never See, I've never been in the maybe. I mean, when I'm that a lot of these really big churches, but I don't go out where the coffee shop is. I just wonder, do they have like Lazarus latte or something out there just to kind of pick you up and get you through get you through the sermon? Uh, I did. Speaking of the
Forgive him, Lord. He knows not what he does.
no, well, it's a coffee thing. I did. The Catholics do have you ever in all your trips to New York? Did you ever go in St. Patrick's Cathedral?
No, no, I haven't. I've seen it. I've walked past it, but
Yeah,
I never went
yeah.
in there. Yeah.
You ought to go in there. Just a beautiful, although you're from England, so you're not awed by the magnificent buildings like I am. You've got, I guess, what's the one that's been there 700 something years in
Oh,
England?
we've got Westminster Abbey. We've
Yeah,
got St Paul's. It's very beautiful. At the weekend, I was in Southwark Cathedral, which is just on the other side of the Thames. Which is, or do you know what I should know? I don't know how it is, but you walk in and it's yeah, splendor,
yeah.
statues, gold. Incredible.
It's just beautiful. And St. Patrick's Cathedral, I've gone into. Just to to go in to see it. It's just this beautiful thing. And then sometimes, like when I was in New York, I would walk up and down Sixth Avenue, and it would get really cold in the wintertime, and I could slip into to St. Patrick's Cathedral, even though I'm not Catholic. But they have like a full-fledged gift shop in there, and I was, I couldn't help it. I stuck my head in there. I'm like, what are y'all selling in here? Popesicles? Or y'all got any popcorn? I was like, you can laugh at that, Richard. I have done that in a Catholic church, and,
And it
and the
works. Yeah.
nuns died. The nuns died laughing. I, it's every time I do that, people look at me. Whoa, 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 whoa! What is? But they actually had little Pope soaps, little Pope on the rope in the gift shop. I'm not making this
No, they
up.
didn't.
I am not making it up because
Patrick
you're
McCall.
I am not making it up, Richard. I'm not gonna lie on a podcast about bringing people to Jesus. They do, because
All right,
the
I believe you, man. I believe you.
you- you're a little too young to remember this, but we used to get in the '70s. You had soap on a rope,
Yeah, I
where like you
just
could,
about remember Soap on a Rope.
yeah,
Yeah, I just about
hot
remember.
karate, English leather. Obviously, it was an English thing called English leather, and you had like some cologne and aftershave, and then you had soap on a rope. and I got it when I was like 12 years old. That's what I thought I'd just become a man. I got it one Christmas morning. I got soap on a rope, like my brother, but I didn't realize that you hung it around the top of the shower and then took it off to wash with. I thought it was like a medallion. You put it on your head and walked around like, here I am, like you in a gang. You know what I mean? I'm soap on
Yeah,
a rope, man. Yeah,
just
but they, I'm clean from the neck up because I hadn't figured out I can take this thing off
take
and
it
wash
off.
it and washed, yeah, and washed the rest of me. But I'm looking good up here. But they did.
Yeah.
They had little Pope soaps, and they did. The nuns laughed at that. I've performed in a lot of Catholic churches. Matter of fact, one
Yeah.
time I scared my wife to death because I called her and said, "How'd the show go?" I said, "I killed the nuns." She's like, "Oh my God."
Finally
Yeah.
happened. Pat's gone
Yeah.
postal.
Too. I was like, no, no nuns. No. The nuns loved me. It's term.
I
But
went to I went to a Catholic church in Hattiesburg as well. I went to a Catholic church. A friend of mine, he hadn't been to mass for a while. He wanted to go. He asked if I'd go with him. And it's not my denomination, but the Lord is the Lord, and also it's like to turn around and say, oh no, I'm not gonna go with you because it's not my thing. We sort of seem kind of like the opposite of what this is about. So I went with him, and it was the the difference there. It was a lot brighter. It was a lot brighter than Catholic churches here. It was just yeah, same, very much the same sort of service. But yeah, it's brighter. There was a brightness to it that we don't have so much over here. 'Cause a lot of our churches are obviously kind of predate um like America in its, current form. So it tends to be a little bit more austere. Whereas this, it was modern, it was bright. It was, but I'll tell you where it was. It was by what's the big university you have there in Hattiesburg?
University of
So,
Southern Mississippi.
yeah, it was opposite there. It was opposite there.
It was
Uh,
was there a baseball field right beside it?
yes, 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 there was. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's Saint. I know the one. I know the one you're talking about. Yeah,
yeah.
that's been there for a long time. But there's several Catholic churches. There's a Catholic school. That was you tend to stereotype, and when you and I met, I was assuming all church in England was was very similar. I thought, that you could just what you've seen on TV, Westminster Abbey, and you've seen the priest in the robes, and then you sent me a video of the church and people just praising, and it looked like m most churches in America. It was just people in there. It was almost like it was just a building. It wasn't even really a stately church, which
No, no, that's Soul Survivor. That's a church I have been attending a lot recently. I'm not 100% sure it's my home just yet, but there's a lot of amazing things about it. But yeah, it's just in a warehouse, so it's
yeah,
like a little three warehouses joined together. They do a lot of cool stuff. They've got a coffee shop. They do a lot of stuff for the youth and for the kids, but they're a Christian music label as well, so they put a lot of music out. So they have it's a big, bright, modern, worship-filled experience there. Um, yeah, which is, I mean, it's good. Like it's full of praise and worship. It sometimes I don't know. You tell me what you think about this, Pat. Right? This was a point that someone made to me before, but it's like when we worship, right? It's for Him, right? We're worshiping Him, right? And then what can happen, this is how it's explained to me, and it's something I recognize in myself, is like, when we go to those huge, big, brightly lit, emotive experiences, it's like it can become about us. Oh, this feels good. It feels good because I'm here and I get the tingles and it's this someone said to me, you can end up worshiping that experience, rather than worshiping him. And I really, yeah, I took something for that. It's something I've kind of thought about a lot of times in the time that I've been a believer. It's like that, making sure that we're worshiping the right thing. You know.
what you're saying is like when you go to the big production, you kind of think it's like the production's there more for you, and then you're instead of there worshiping. Is that what you're saying? The
Yeah,
production.
exactly. It
Well,
becomes
that's
about the
kind of what.
vibe. You're worshipping the
What's that?
vibe. Sorry, go on, Pope.
No, go ahead.
Well, you worship the
Yeah,
vibe. You
that's
worship
what I was
the
going to say.
yeah, like and someone suggested to me actually there's a danger that you could fall into idolatry there because you're not actually worshipping what you're supposed to be worshipping. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of great things about that church. I mean, Hillsong, right? If we talk about Hillsong, right? And obviously Hillsong's coming for, there's been a lot of controversy around Hillsong, right? But
So,
um, go on, Pat. Sorry, you broke up a little.
Hillsong.
Say again, Pat.
I thought Hillsong is based out of Australia.
Yeah, so but we have them in England as
Yeah.
well, and like
Yeah. Okay.
obviously
Go ahead.
they put on a huge, they put on a great show, right?
Right.
And there's a lot of that vibe there. I think it's something, that pitfall is you can fall into that at Hillsong, but I took a lad like a guy to to Hillsong, and like he gave his life to Jesus there, right? And there was something about that experience, something within that experience. It hooked him in, And I know a lot of people that have got because of that because of that kind of worship experience, whatever it is that's being worshipped, it's attractive to people, And it was attractive to him, and he gave his life to Jesus. And for me, Hillsong was definitely a way in. Their music, it was definitely a way in. And then I realised later that actually from a church, I wanted something a bit different, but Hillsong was a way in. So, it's just something I think about sometimes, is that, you know, within that huge, brightly lit production of an experience, like, yeah, all right, maybe it can be idolatry, but like if it brings people to him, is it? Who knows? I don't have all the answers, but yeah.
Say when you were talking about the big church. It's what, first off, you and I both agree, it is whatever works, whatever brings
Mm,
someone to Jesus, whether it's the big production, whether it's the big, people will come and the worship music is a lot of it is great music. Um, but do you know that that is not the majority of the churches in America? The majority of the churches in America are the ones you passed on the way that you didn't even notice. The
mm,
majority of churches have 200 or less people, and they're pastored by people like the church I go to, Destiny Church in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, pastored by Don Hooper, fantastic guy. This church is in a it's in a strip mall, kind of like where you went. You're not driving down the road seeing the big cathedral. You have to pull up in there, and it's a converted strip mall that they've had to go in, and they do the work. A lot of these guys, these pastors, because people think, oh, these pastors are in it for the money and their stuff. These pastors in most of these churches, the majority of churches, the 200 or less, they have day jobs or they're working or they're constantly working, around the clock. I did a show for a pastor named Will Watt out in Bude, Mississippi, a little small town. We drive out there, and I'm going to wait before I go out and do my show and speak. And he tells me here, you can wait in my office. Well, I walk in a minute. I'm like, oh, you said it's wait in your office. I'm like, I'm in the utility room because it's just full of ladders and paint, and hammers and chainsaws. He's like, no, that's my office. In other words, that was the guy's office because he spent his time working. He helped build around the church. He helped fix. It wasn't this glorious production, but it was a church that just made such a difference in people's lives. They have things for children. You know what I mean? It's a family. Something happens to somebody. That pastor's there. There's a community that you can go to. And I tell people, um, when I run into people that are just really lonely or lost or I messed up and I don't have family or I don't have this, they don't really realize that you go to that church, you go to those smaller type church. They're not small. They're still nice sized churches, but they're not the big glorious churches with the massive productions. But you go to those, good chance you're going to meet a family. You're going to meet people. They meet on Wednesday night. They meet on Sunday night. They meet, obviously have church on Sunday morning, but it kind of becomes a family. And that's the majority of what churches are in America. You don't see it because you see people see what's on TV. You see the big glorious thing. You don't see the guy that's out there that works as hard as he can. His wife is a part of whatever he's doing. Everything is in there. I remember going over and doing the one of the first times I performed in a church, pretty nice sized church, and they were paying me some money, and I was like, well, what are we going to give the sound guy and and she said, well, they do it because they love the Lord. And I'm like, well, that's, we, wanted to give them something anyway, but the point is, it's not the big, huge production. It's the smaller churches make a really big difference in people's lives. And I don't, if it's the big church, if it's because you get a lot of younger people that are going, maybe it's because they like a scene or a vibe or a social type thing. And there are churches, some of the big churches are social. It's a thing where people get up and put their suits on and go, and you just, it's whatever, people like doing. The point is, it's about developing a relationship and following Jesus. And in America, the majority of churches are 200 or something less. And it's not easy being one of these pastors because there is a social aspect to churches where, I mean, people that have been going to a church for a long time. I mean, the pastor could move a plant from one side of like the altar or whatever to the other side. Half the church will leave. I always like that plant right there. I mean, I'm exaggerating just a little bit. Or you'll have the church where you've got, this one sister that wants to get up and sing at every church. That's, oh gosh, he's gonna let cousin Mary get up and sing, and she can't sing. So there's always that little thing that's kind of going on in some of the churches. But it is the smaller type churches where it's the majority of what you don't see it when you're in America. So it's not just the big glorious type churches. And I'll tell you one thing: if any pastors are listening, because I was just thinking, one, I don't know. Have you ever been in a church service where you guys start holding hands?
No, no, hold hand
Okay.
holding.
Well, it's a thing that can happen over here. The pastor will want everybody to hold hands. We're all going to join in prayer. Just let me give a little word of advice to any pastors out there. Let's not be holding hands with strangers. Nobody's thinking of the Holy Spirit moving. Nobody's even thinking of what you're saying. You're holding the hand of somebody next to you. And all you're thinking of is, am I squeezing this woman's hand too hard? She think I'm coming on to her? Am I not squeezing it hard enough? Does she think I don't like her? Or did this guy just come out of the bathroom? But it's a thing where people will join hands. If you're a pastor out there, let's not do let's not do the hand holding anymore, because everybody in there is totally creeped out about it.
We're
In
we're more
England, though,
we're more
go ahead.
reserved than that over here. But there's we do the like sharing the peace. You do that?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there'll often be like a call in church to kind of turn to your neighbor and like just you'd say like peace be with you, but as soul survivor what they do is the church I mentioned earlier they ask you to go and talk to someone like and that that can feel kind of awkward, you approach a stranger, hi, how are you, but I've had some lovely conversations doing that, really lovely conversations just bowing up to a stranger and just how long you've been coming here, how long you've been a believer. That's a nice thing. I like that.
See, you and I, that's another thing that we've discussed in the past when we first started going to church. Uh, I wasn't used to it. And that is a thing that at the beginning of most churches that I go to, the pastor comes up, he reads a script, he reads a scripture or uh, welcomes everybody and says, now turn to your neighbor and walk around and greet somebody and greet. But what happens is the people that know each other will all go greet each other. So the person that's just there for the first time doesn't know anybody, and it can be it can be a little awkward. But they do that. It's just a normal. All right, turn around and say hello to your neighbor. By the same token, I have been to churches where you will see that person that understands that and they'll seek you out. And that's where you meet friends. They'll come on there and go, I see that person is over there. A lot of people will turn. There's a social aspect to church. People will turn and they're immediately going to go say hello to their friends. But if you're new to the church, when you first walked in there, you're kind of sitting there like, now is when it's obvious that I don't know anybody that's in here. So you're just kind of standing there waiting to, but there's usually somebody that will come over, like probably what happens in Soul Survivor, and hi, I'm so and so, and kind of welcome you to the church, and then you kind of know who that person is from that point forward. But I'm not
Yeah,
talking about that. That does happen. I'm just talking about this thing in the church that I always that it's the pastor will be get whatever the message is. Let's everyone join hands because we're going to join hands, Richard, because we're joining in prayer and we're joining in and connecting the Holy Spirit throughout the room, but we're not doing any of that. We are holding somebody a stranger's hand, and most of us are creeped out about it. I'm just telling pastors out there. You're holding a stranger's hand, and that's not the thing where people walk around and do that. But see, in England, I thought so. The churches like Westminster or things like that, they just are those Protestant churches?
well, we have Church of England over here, which split off from the
Catholic.
Catholic. Yeah, so yes, it would be Protestant. Yeah, um, and then we
Well,
have a lot.
see,
Well, we
go ahead.
have a lot of so a lot of our church buildings are a bit older. Obviously, though, the kind of more modern churches are in a minor, definitely in a minority. You know, but yeah. So our churches tend to, there's a lot of very old church buildings that we have, very beautiful.
The revival that you spoke about, because I've heard of that. There is a revival that seems to be going on in England.
Yeah,
And and in the past, you hear and is there not persecution, discrimination maybe is like I know there might be a revival, but it seemed like it gotten to a point when England when following Jesus wasn't that cool and that wasn't
yeah.
is
I mean, very much so, man. It was like there's a lot of churches closed.
right.
I don't know the statistics, but there was definitely like they were talking for what seemed like a long time that church attendance was diminishing like year on year. So there's quite a lot of empty churches, which is very sad. Where the congregation just dwindled to the point it wasn't sustainable. And then you might have had three churches that were sharing one pastor or vicar, if you want to call like because there just wasn't there wasn't enough tithing to support like a church having its own minister. So that was all very sad. But yeah, they're saying there's been the statistics are there's been this huge revival, particularly in Gen Z, where like church attendance is going up and up and up and up. And when I'm in Oxford, the church I attend is called St Aldate's, which is a fantastic church. And they said they were experiencing people were just coming in and saying, I don't really know what I'm doing here, but like I just felt like this was where I'm supposed to be. And um I think they had 39 people give their life to Jesus in one service. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know, right? It's like what an amazing thing. And they evangelize. It's a church that goes out into the community and evangelizes, but not like, I mean, 39 people in one service and people walking in just off the street, just like, I just got led here. I don't really know why, but here I am. It's really something.
We talk about the Church of England. Just the country of England has played such an important part in Christianity. The Bible that most people read was translated in England. Did you ever read on C.S. Lewis?
Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, C.S. Lewis was British. Tolkien, J.R. Tolkien was British.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
grew up,
Ox but in
I grew
Oxford.
up, what's that?
Well, Lewis was at Oxford, wasn't he? He was at Oxford University when
Yeah.
his was. I mean, I don't even know. Was it Tolkien? But like, was it one of his fellow students said, like, C.S. Lewis said to him, like, why do you believe in God? and he was, and he said, "Oh, I get the tingles just saying that." And his, his fellow student said, "You're an academic, man. Do your research." Do you know what I mean? And then he took himself off and read everything, and then just came to the point of view that it's like you can't argue with the existence
Yeah.
of God. And the way he positions the argument is really quite extraordinary. Like if anyone's listening and they're exploring faith, reading Mere Christianity is a really good place to start.
Say that again.
Mere Christianity by
Yeah,
C.S.
C.S.
Lewis.
Lewis.
Yeah, that's a really good place to start.
I never knew. I didn't know he was British. I didn't know he was English. But I'd heard C.S. Lewis all my life. Ever since I've been a Christian, I've heard, well, C.S. Lewis. I was like, well, this is one of the most brilliant men. And it was something you and I were discussing at times. Like, C.S. Lewis was English, and he was an atheist, wasn't he?
He was, yes, and he had that like what you might almost call like an academic conversion. He assessed all of the evidence and all of the writings and the biblical texts and everything from then on, and came to the conclusion not that that Jesus was a man that walks on the earth, which is historically kind of very, almost impossible to argue with, right? That a man called Jesus walked the earth at that time, but he came to the conclusion that the argument for the existence of God and Jesus being the Son of God was you couldn't argue against it, and the way he writes about it is just, it's amazing. He inspired me. C.S. Lewis inspired me towards my theological studies. He gives this beautiful analogy of he says it's like if you're walking down, along the beach, like down the shoreline, right? And you can see you can see the sea and it stretches out and it's amazing and the sun's sparkling off it and the waves and it's so vast and you have this experience, this awe-inspiring experience, and it's very beautiful, but that's all it'll ever be, is the experience. Yeah. But he said if you look at a map, you're never going to get that same experience out of a map. You never will. Yeah, it's a map. It's a bit of paper with some images on it that represent something. But he said without the map, you'll never navigate that sea. You'll always just be limited to that experience. And he said that's what theology is. Theology is the map that allows you to navigate and go deeper into that experience. And that's certainly been my experience of the fraction of theological studies that I've done so far. It's just that, like, it's like you can't help but deepen, or for me it deepened my faith. I know for some it can be challenging unpacking things in that way, but for me it's been like just a much richer um journey into my belief, into my faith. And that was all thanks to C.S. Lewis.
That's awesome. I've just been reading on it. Well, whatever's happened, the journey that both of us on has led us to has led us to happiness and joy, and we're going to kind of leave it here. Oh, and as far as the British are concerned, you would think it'd be a revival because we all grew up thinking Jesus was British, the disciples were British. I thought Jesus looked like Robert Powell, the actor, because every movie they have British accents. Even The Chosen now, The Chosen, the new series that's out, all British.
Yeah. Well, if we think about it, Pat, the translation of the Bible, the invention of the printing press, yeah,
Yes,
C.S. Lewis, The Chosen.
yes.
I mean, I guess if I was going to sum all of that up in two words, Pat, for our American listeners, it would be you're welcome.
Well, that's what I was doing, Richard. I was giving you a compliment and showing you my admiration for you Brits, and obviously you had already accepted it before I said it. So, so now that we've had an exercise in humility, let's. All right. Well, look, it was good to see you. I appreciate you coming in late today because we had to kind of squeeze this in. So, all right, man. Well, God bless everybody out there, and Richard, I will see you next week.
You will indeed. Thank you very much, Patrick McCall.
All right. Take care. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye.